Hello, my name is Chris Hayes, and this is my instructional unit final presentation for EDIS 548. I chose to do a unit on comparing and contrasting, so we will get into the presentation. Student characteristics. This is a co-taught language arts classroom that has 19 total students. 9 of the students have IEPs. The students all have reading goals in their IEP to address reading comprehension skills. The entire class is full of struggling readers that need interventions during reading class. The students come from a rural area with very little diversity. Um, this class overall, when we assess them, they are all assessed as low readers. Um, they utilize technology a lot in the classroom. Everybody in the whole entire school is one-to-one iPads, so we use them every day. The students use their iPads for the reading intervention, Achieve 3000. It's a program that the school has adopted this year in the junior high where I'm at is piloting. They utilize this program for 25 minutes every day. It's an informational text intervention program where it sets the passages on their own lexile level so that students can have individualized instruction. The class also utilizes Google Classroom. I utilize Google Classroom for most of my lessons so I can utilize the iPads properly. Um, Students can complete worksheets. In this lesson they will be using it as well by pulling things up and completing different parts of the lesson. We utilize Google Documents with it. It allows us to keep track of everything, and it helps. It's also like an organizational piece for a lot of these students since they struggle with organization. And Google Classroom keeps all of their working documents in one place for them, so it's very easy to find. Um, One thing we do run into, since this is a rural district, we cannot really assign homework through the iPad because majority of our students do not have internet at home. So that is one thing that I have struggled with trying to utilize the iPads. So that is why we can only use the Achieve 3000 program and Google Classroom currently at school. Lesson plan, general info, and learning target. The learning target for this lesson with students will be able to compare and contrast two elements of the text. This lesson was comparing and contrasting two different sets of pictures. I scaffolded the lessons to build up to the end goal. I felt that breaking it down and starting at a point where we could build confidence as a class. The students completed the comparing and contrasting of the two pictures on a Venn diagram and were then asked to share in our small groups. So the first things that they looked at were pictures of a football and a basketball, and then they compared two different pictures of football. Now, most of my kids are involved in sports, and if they're not involved in sports, they were involved when they were younger. So this was a very interesting concept for them. They really enjoyed this part of it, so I felt pretty confident in that. And since we were able to utilize the pictures aspect of it, and we were comparing and contrasting the images, even my lower students were able to contribute to the conversation. So once we began to really get into the lesson, they started to gain confidence, and once we continued on and we eventually began to start comparing different aspects of two pieces of text, they were fairly confident with it, and they were able to contribute to the discussions in class. And I thought it was good. This was a great starting point for them, and they were able to really benefit from this, and especially when they were seeing the modeling and they were gaining confidence from it. So that was one part of my lesson that I thought went really well for them. Lesson delivery. Yeah, the learning target was stated multiple times to the students. The students were able to see modeling and collaborate with peers during the lesson. The students were engaged because the students enjoy sports and the pictures were of footballs and basketballs. Ultimately, the students enjoyed the lesson. Like I previously said, part of my lesson delivery was making sure that they really enjoyed this. I kind of gave them a little teaser about the pictures, kind of showed them at the beginning of the lesson. They got really excited about it. So, I mean, that was kind of fun to see them. Most of these students do not really enjoy language arts class. They have this class first thing in the morning. So some of them, and this rural district that I'm in is a rather large district. Some of these students are on a bus for an hour or more. So once they're getting to school, the first thing they are asked to do is begin reading. They're asked to um, be able to read something, comprehend it, and a lot of times they struggle with this concept, and they don't have a lot of confidence with this. So when we were able to begin this lesson, the students, one of my biggest things I wanted to, like I said, to have them gain confidence. So it was really nice to see them have that confidence when we continued on with this lesson, and the students really enjoyed it. Lesson assessment. I used exit slips for formative assessments, and I also used observations as formative assessments. And this allowed me to check for immediate understanding, and this seemed to show me that the students had mastered the topic. Once we moved on to begin the writing portion, the students could not apply what we learned in working in the small groups to the writing portion. So this is still an ongoing process. Now, when we were doing this, like I said, they were very confident in it. The exit slips turned when they turned them in. They showed the correct response. They were responding to what I asked them. I asked them to define, compare, and contrast in their own words. They were able to do that. Utilizing the Venn diagrams, we eventually moved on to different parts where we were comparing two characters in the text. And once again, they were able to complete the Venn diagram. So that was good to see. So they were understanding the concepts of comparing and contrasting. However, when we were trying to apply our knowledge of comparing and contrasting into some type of paragraph or some type of essay, the students could not translate what they learned in small group to the writing. So I'm not really sure. I don't feel like it was an issue necessarily with the comparing and contrasting. I feel like it was a poor summative assessment in the end to try and utilize some type of writing, which they also struggle in writing, to show what they know dealing with comparing and contrasting. So we'll get into that in the next slide. The formative assessments, though, I thought they were very beneficial because they did allow me to check for understanding, and the students showed that they understood the concepts. The observations were very important because I was able to observe the students engage in productive and appropriate discussions about topics, whether it was with utilizing the pictures or utilizing two different characters on a text, or comparing two different texts together, or comparing different medias together like a text and a video. So students eventually were successful in those other aspects that I moved on to once this unit was over. So now we're going to go into the strengths and weaknesses of the unit. The lesson plan was successful overall and the kids enjoyed it. When I think of a successful lesson, I want my students to have fun and retain the learning target. I feel like all of this happened during the lesson, and that is why I would consider it successful. Like I said, the formative assessments showed that they understood the learning target. The observations showed that they were having appropriate and productive discussions about it. So that led me to the conclusion that they understood the concepts of comparing and contrasting. Once we began to move on, we were getting a little bit deeper into it. We began comparing larger things, like I said, characters. We were comparing settings, different types of medias. They were successful with that when utilizing graphic organizers like Venn diagrams. So that showed me through formative assessments that they were retaining the knowledge. Now the next part was my weakness. The weakness of the lesson was the summative assessment. I feel that when I was planning this lesson, I should have planned a different summative assessment to better reflect their mastery. The summative assessment had too many components that could skew the results to show student knowledge of the skill. And I think that part that skewed it was the writing portion. The majority of my students do not like to write, whether it is writing it out on pen and paper or typing it in Google Docs. They do not enjoy it. Their writing skills are poor. Their syntax and semantics not do not flow out correctly. So they have very little confidence when writing. Only about 2 or 3 of the students really were successful in the summative assessment with the writing portion. So I think that I need to change my summative assessment. One of the ways I was thinking of was simply assessing a Venn diagram, because they were successful with that. Trying to come up with some type of curriculum-based assessment where I could have multiple choice questions or give them 2 passages and allow them to answer questions that would deal with comparing and contrasting. But I think that would be the more beneficial thing for me to do. Other than that, I felt like the students gained knowledge from this lesson. I felt like they had fun while doing it, and I felt like it was, in fact, a successful lesson. I really wish I would have planned and thought through the summative assessment a little bit better. So that would be the thing that I would change about this lesson. And I would like to thank you for listening to my presentation, and thank you.